Just changing gears a little
Yeah,
bit in
sure.
regard to the special election. You
Yeah.
tweeted a few times that it's a wake-up call for
Yeah.
Republicans. Why do you think the election turned out as it did, and what do Republicans, in your view, need to do moving forward?
Well, I certainly think for me personally, as I said, it's a wake-up call. And it's a wake-up call that we can't presume that everyone knows about the extremely positive things that we've done for the people of Wisconsin. Just because we've done it, we're getting things done. I think a lot of people were frustrated, not just last night in that special election, I think in other elections across the country, with the lack of action in Washington. I think if people look at the facts, if we do a better job of telling people the story, we're very much unlike Washington. We're actually getting things done in this state. It's why we have a near record low unemployment. It's why we've got more people working than ever before. If we tell people we've made the biggest investment in K through 12 education in the history of the state, more than $200 more this year for every school in every district in every part of the state of Wisconsin. On top of that, another $204 for every student in every school in every part of the state. If you look at the major investments we made already, on top of what we're announcing today, into our technical colleges, into our UW system, when people look at the fact that we've done all that and we still, as was announced today, have a larger than expected budget surplus, that we balanced our budget, that we got rid of the state property tax, so it made it more affordable for working families and senior citizens, that our healthcare systems, many of which are the pride of this area, are ranked #1 in the nation for quality. When people look at tuition's been frozen 6 years in a row at UW campuses for in-state undergraduates from Wisconsin, there's a lot of really good things that show that we're getting the job done. We just gotta do a better job. It's a wake-up call that just because we've been doing it doesn't mean that everybody knows about it. And so certainly next Wednesday at the State of the State, I'm going to start talking about that in greater depth. And I think over the next few months, our hope is if we get that story out, people who are frustrated with the inability of Washington to get things done should be proud of the fact that here in Wisconsin, we are getting things done. And many of those things aren't necessarily partisan. Since I've been governor, more than 90% of the laws that I've signed after coming out of the legislature have been passed with more than Republican votes. So we're getting the job done in contrast to Washington.
Does it adjust your own reelection campaign, seeing what's going on nationwide?
Well, I think it clearly sends the message I can't take anything for granted. That we can't just assume that people know about all the good things we're doing to get the job done that's positive for people in this state. And so we'll not only do that, but we'll probably, in a way, I think there is a fair amount of distrust of institutions from either Republican or Democrat-leaning voters out there. And so part of our goal is not just talking about it, but pointing to the validation of where it comes from. Good example being today. The good news today was the nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau, which doesn't work for Republicans or Democrats. It's nonpartisan, came out and showed that there was a larger than expected budget surplus. Those are things we'll plow into our rainy day fund. We'll plow into driving down debt. We'll do more to make investment in education and higher education and our transportation system, as well as keeping our tax burden affordable. Those are all things we can do because our economy continues to grow and our budget reforms continue to work.
Do you see that the election as possibly a message to Washington, D.C., since Donald Trump won that district by 17 points? Now all of a sudden here, not even 18 months later, that's pretty well shifted to a
I think
Democrat?
there's, without a doubt, whether it's about one person or not, I don't know, but it's definitely frustration I've heard long before last night and far away from just this district. I've heard it elsewhere in the state. People are frustrated that Washington isn't doing more, that they felt there was a whole array of issues they wanted to address, and they haven't yet dealt with many of those issues. So certainly, that's some of the burden that people have with anybody in office. Part of our mission is to lay out the contrast and say, if you're upset with Washington, pivot and look at Wisconsin, because we're about the opposite of that. For all the frustration people have with not getting things done, we're actually getting things done, probably more than any state in the nation, and it's had positive results. I mean, not only putting more money in the schools than ever before, our students have some of the best ACT scores and some of the highest graduation rates in the country. We have one of the best states in the nation in terms of the percentage of people in the workforce because we've got more people working than ever before. I talked about healthcare. You've got a lot of, we talked about nursing and all the need here. Even with our high demand for nursing and healthcare professionals, we're ranked #1 in the nation for the quality of our healthcare system. There's some amazing things happening in this state, but I think oftentimes, and it's a combination, I'd say part of it is As an elected official, I just do it, and I don't spend a lot of time talking about it. I probably need to talk about it more. My hope would be a little bit, I'll place the burden on the medias. It's human nature. You guys like to cover bad things, not necessarily good things, not just for me, but even for these institutions. It's, you know, these guys are less, they shouldn't be, but they're less newsworthy than if somebody steals something from some campus account. And so it's human nature. It's not, I'm not just picking on you guys, but it's one of those where I think all of us, the more we talk about the things that are happening, you know, people can talk about the good and the bad, but I think if people look at the net effect of what's happening in the state, they'll see it's a stark contrast to Washington, where people are genuinely and understandably upset. Here in Wisconsin, we are getting the job done. We're getting positive things done for people all over the state every single day.
In the legislature, I think the Assembly recently passed a sexually violent predators bill. There was one months ago that you vetoed that's, I think, a little bit different than the one that's kind of making rounds now. Can you just talk about why, if you have plans to sign it, if it makes its way through the Senate? And
Depends on the language. In the original budget, what I was concerned about was placement and where individuals would be at, and that people would get placed in the places where they didn't come from, so I wanted to make sure those were protected. If the protections are upheld in the whatever version they pass, per what I mentioned in the budget, the veto message that I put in there, if they can meet that criteria so that people are protected and they meet that standard, certainly we'd look at it.
All right, thank you, everybody.
So you go with me.
Yeah, what's the timeline now for Lincoln Hills?
For us, it depends on how quickly the legislature can act. We've always had, we plan for more than a year, we've been working with law enforcement, criminal justice experts, the judiciary, lawmakers in both political parties, so we've actively worked. A few of the naysayers were involved, but a lot of people who pride themselves in being involved in solutions on criminal justice, both Democrat and Republican, have been a part of this process. And we said we were going to act until we had a plan. Saying you're going to shut something down and transform it to something else if you don't have a place to go with is good, maybe good rhetoric, but it doesn't get the job done. We laid out the plan. We said we could do it in the budget. We went back and talked to lawmakers. We sensed there was a willingness in both parties to act on it sooner. So my hope is, and what we are asking for now, is that they pass it before the end of this legislative session. We're already queued up and ready to put out requests for proposals to go and do the construction on that. And once the depends on when they give us approval. But then after that, it will take some time to build these 6 facilities, 5 of which we spread out statewide, 1 of which would be at Mendota because we have a nationally recognized mental health program there. And then our goal would be to transition the existing facility in Lincoln County into a medium security adult prison that would focus on alcohol and drug abuse treatment. So any of the people working there now would have 1 of 2 options. There'd be no need for any layoffs. In fact, there actually might be a heightened amount of employment there because the 2 options they would have would be to go to one of any of the other 6 smaller facilities. At a minimum, one of least would be in the northern part of the state, but they could go to any of them. Or secondly, they could stay at that facility if they wanted to be at an adult institution and just stay at the same spot. Because we'll probably, just because of the growing number of people, because of a law change a few years ago that increases the penalties for repeat drunk driving offenders, there'll probably be a substantial increase over the next few years in terms of people in prison because of repeat drunk driving offenses. The majority of those individuals will be at that site in Lincoln County, and we'll probably have to hire more people. So in the end, you'll probably, that's why it's Lincoln County officials like it, other people like it, have looked at this. It's a good way to send the most serious juvenile offenders back out closer to the counties where they came from, since the counties are the ones who send the offenders in the first place. At the same time, you transition into a medium security facility that will probably increase the total amount of employment in and around that facility in Lincoln.
Any concerns about Assembly and Senate cooperation? It sounded like Robin Voss wasn't sure if moving so fast recently was.
Well, I think that, as I understand, we had another talk with the Speaker and Senator Fitzgerald and others today, and I hope to help them bring together some county officials on this as well. Is the Speaker is particularly interested in seeing if whether or not the counties themselves want to run it, mainly because his county, Racine County, has a program that does something very similar to that. If the counties are interested, we're more than willing to make that work, but it's incumbent upon the counties wanting to do that. With 72 counties, some may want to, others may not. You really have to have buy-in from all 72 to work, which is precisely why we took the time not to rush out with a plan for political reasons, but rather to spend the time substantively to put in place a plan that the counties could support, because if they don't support your plan, they're the ones that pay for it, they're the ones that send people there. You can't make it work without county support. So they support what we proposed. If they want to modify and amend that to allow the counties to play a more direct role, we're fine with it as long as the counties are. Really, the bottom line for me is all 72 counties have to be in agreement on this to make it work. We got them there with our proposal that was in work with people like Evan Goyke, a Democrat in the legislature, and others, Republican legislators, Republican in the legislature as well. But if he wants to modify that and the counties are on board, we're fine. It's really incumbent on the counties being supported.
What changed your mind on the
Last one,
timeline?
please.
Oh, it's just simple, legislative approval. When we said we want to do this, we want to announce this, we spent the time working on it, and it was as simple as lawmakers in both parties said they were interested in it, and so we said, okay, well, let's push for it now.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you again, Governor. It's always an honor and a privilege to have you come to NTC. We appreciate again your support, and we certainly support your initiatives. And thank you for everyone that's here today. And thank